Um, so first, I'm just going to go over the Zoom platform for everyone so that we're all familiar with the platform. And it is different on iPads than it is on iPhones. And so some of what I'm saying, I'm on a laptop. Some of what I'm saying, I recognize you might not have that button, but some of what I'm also saying you will have. So hopefully enough of what I'm about to go over is on the iPad that you feel like you can participate. For one, if you go to the top right corner, you'll see a button that says view. If you click on that button, it'll say speaker and gallery. A speaker view is whoever's speaking is simply the large photo and then everyone else is small. And as people change when they're talking, that speaker will change. The gallery view gives everyone kind of equal weight in your screen. If I had to recommend one, I recommend the gallery because it's nice to see people's reactions and it feels a little bit more like you're in a room with people all the same size instead of having that shift of who's speaking. But that is a personal preference. The other thing, so everybody knows, is it's being recorded. Seth, is it okay with you that we're recording? Okay. And that's not for any grand use outside of, we'd like to have it on our website. So if people did miss this and want to go back and watch it, then it's there as a resource. The bottom left corner of the screen is the mute button. So for some reason you need to mute, there it is. Then if you go, you'll see the button that says participants. If you click on that, it'll open a screen to the right, and this might just be for the panelists, but basically it lets you see the panelists' names and the attendees' names. So if you're expecting someone tonight or want to direct questions to someone in particular, you can kind of scroll up and down and see their name. Last night we had Beatrice Wood with us, which we all thought was pretty funny. Then there is the chat button. So the chat in this platform we're going to use for just, if someone wants to send a link or someone wants to do something that's more just a general chat with everyone, that's the chat. If you have a question for a panelist, then go to the Q&A and type in your question there. Right now, even opening it, we've already have 2 questions. So I'll start with those 2 questions after the introduction. And then if for some reason one of the attendees or participants, they're not comfortable with the typing for whatever reason that is, and you'd rather raise your hand and verbalize your question, if you click the raised hand, I believe, then I'll see that hand. No one's actually used that one yet, but I'll see the hand by you, and then I can give you, someone's just raised their hand, one of the panelists, but I'll give you speaking permission, and then you can verbalize your question, and then we'll mute you. And the reason the participants or the attendees don't have video and speaking permission to start with is because just the bandwidth, this program seems to run smoother the fewer videos that are open, and also there's a lot of feedback if there's too many unmuted people in one room. So in general, the clarity is just better. I think that is about it for the Zoom platform. Amy, who was on here in the beginning, she's our technical wizard, so I'm just here to tell you about it, but she's actually the one that knows about it. And I guess I'm just going to go ahead and start in and introduce everyone here. So my name is Lindsay Ostrader. I am in Manassas, Virginia, and I am just the moderator for tonight. So I'm one of the organizers. I'm new this year to Southern Crossings. This is my first year organizing the show. Amy Chase and Stephen Cheek, they are the other 2 organizers for the exhibition, and we're all here tonight. And we're so glad to have our artists and our participants here with us tonight and sharing this. So Seth Green, if you could put your hand up so everybody knows who I'm talking about. Seth Green, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Andrew McIntyre, Thaxton, Mississippi. Kyle Scott Lee, Brooklyn, New York. And Birdie Boone, Meadowview, Virginia. So yeah, it's good to have everybody in the same room from such diverse areas in the US. And we'll just I'll just open it up and somebody can start talking. So I'll go ahead and open it up to Andrew McIntyre.
Great. Well, thanks, Lindsay. Welcome. I'm excited to be here. So I'm coming to you from Thaxton, Mississippi. I'm from Jackson, actually, Mississippi. And my history, basically, just a little introduction for you, for those who don't know me. I went to Ole Miss for my BFA and got my MFA at Syracuse University. And so in 2015, after I got my MFA, I came back to Mississippi, and I've been the technician and teaching at Ole Miss since then. So I teach beginning ceramics, intermediate ceramics, I help run the studio with Matt Long, and make everything, work as best I can. I also make functional pots, utilitarian vessels that go in and out of your kitchen, your microwave, your dishwasher. I'm making vessels primarily out of Grollig porcelain. So I high fire. I used to do a lot of reduction firing, and I still do soda firing and wood firing when I can. Because of COVID, we have not been wood firing nearly as much as we usually do, but you'll see my work currently is primarily soda fired to cone 10, 11. And I guess that's pretty good. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we do have one question that kind of relates to the intro. People are wondering about the mugs behind you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was trying to decide where I was going to set up, and we have a new house, and it's still kind of underway and getting, set up and putting things in place. And this was one of the first things that my wife and I put together. Anyway, it just makes us feel at home. So this is one of the cup walls we have. And I guess later we'll go into some, talk about inspiration, but a lot of my inspiration is behind me. And so this is just one of the walls that we grab from. A lot of collection, a lot of trades, some of the work is my own, but mostly it's from others. So I like to interact with work from other people and learn from other people all over the world. Mm-hmm.
All right. What about Kyle Scott Lee?
Hi, I'm Kyle Lee. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I am not a classically trained ceramic artist, not institutionally, but I began taking classes back in 2003 and got the bug and and have never looked back, basically. I'm currently in the process of building out my own studio. I've partnered with West Elm, a couple other places as well, smaller kind of ceramic opportunities also. I'm originally born in New York, lived in Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and then back to New York. Did 1 year in Paris as well. And just kind of have been experimenting with my ceramics over the time period. I work a lot with white stoneware clay. I use, most of my work is done with underglazes, Amico velvet underglazes. I do use some made glazes, but mostly with underglazes. And then a clear transparent coat on glaze on top. And I would say that, I kind of venture into color quite heavily. So I like a bold application or design on my ceramics, which are more traditionally shaped vases. And vases, that's what I love making. I do cups, I do dinnerware, but I always kind of end up in making vases. And it's kind of what I've been doing for that amount of time that I've been doing ceramics. I've practiced vases, so I've gotten good at making vases. I also have 14 vases that are in a new Paul Smith store in Soho in Manhattan. And it was a great project because they wanted something that was going to be kind of complement their store, their clothing line, the colors of the clothing, and then they had also picked other local artists who were painters. And I'd never met the painter, and I'd never, I'd gotten swatches of the clothing from Paul Smith, but I'd never met the painter. And the painter, everything just kind of came together. It was amazing. Like the whole color scheme and the vibe just happened perfectly. Like I said, I'm opening up a studio right now. I'm waiting on my kiln to be delivered. I'm waiting on my spray booth to be delivered. I've started making out of the studio, but I can't really fire anything at the moment. But I am still working out of the public studio. I work out of Brooklyn Clay, if you've ever heard of that studio here in Brooklyn. And I think my brother's asking a question. And he wants to know about the process, but I'll talk to him about that later because that's kind of a lengthy conversation, isn't it?
Well, and I figure there's another question that's related in the chat. So I think that we can come back to it for sure.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Seth. You are muted currently. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I by way of introduction, I think that the cool thing about this platform is that you get to connect with people that I haven't seen for a long time. Like I said, as we began Birdie, I met back in 2009 when I was a summer resident at the Archie Bray, and I think Birdie was just finishing up. And Lindsay and I, we've known each other for many years. We've fired kilns together, and we have mutual friends. And so it's really exciting to kind of connect with people. I think that's one thing that the technology has done during the pandemic, is that it's given us an opportunity to kind of connect with people that we otherwise wouldn't really connect with. So I am originally from Southern Utah. I grew up near Zion National Park. I studied ceramics at Southern Utah University, and during college I was a wildland firefighter, and so I got the fire bug early on. Except for I didn't become a wood fire artist until after graduate school. So I studied at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, and I had a really a wonderful experience there. And that's where a lot of my glaze research, began. I've been working with a lot of manganese crystalline glazes over the last 10 years or so. My work is really inspired a lot by Islamic metalwork and architecture from Prague and the Middle East. And some of these more architectural forms that I've been making recently, I've been firing in the wood kiln. And so I've been doing a lot of research in the wood kiln recently, maybe the last probably 7 or 8 years. Ted Neal, one of Lindsay's and I's mutual friends, has helped me build a couple of train kilns. And I'm doing a lot of reduction cooled firing. I'm using stoneware clay with high iron slips and cooling the kiln in reduction. And And one of the things I really like about the reduction cooling process, is that I don't have to put glaze on these pieces, and I get these really highly detailed surfaces without the glaze kind of masking the surface. But I've kind of moved around over the last several years. After graduate school and after the Bray, I went to Western Michigan University and I taught there for a year. And then I was at Morehead State University in Eastern Kentucky for 6 years. And now I've been in Fort Wayne at Purdue Fort Wayne for about 5 years as well. So we love Fort Wayne. We just built a house and have a studio at home. And I look forward to giving you some more information about me.
Well, thank you. All right, and Birdie.
Hi. I am sort of nervous. So if I stick my foot in my mouth, pay me no mind. I am a studio artist. I'm currently living in Southwestern Virginia in the Appalachian foothills. The Appalachian Trail runs through nearby, and so it's wooded, a lot of woodlands. And I have a studio here. It's small but adequate, and it's mine, and I'm really grateful for that. And I do make pots, but I'm struggling. Well, I'm not struggling. That's not the right word to use, but I'm questioning whether I'm a studio potter or not. I'm in the process of questioning whether I make pots to tell a story or whether I tell a story through pots. And so I think that for me as an artist, the medium is the form of expression, and it's a personal expression for me first. And it's universal expression oftentimes as well, which is why other people can enjoy my pots. But a lot of times I will get caught up in going with the flow and forget to take care of myself in the process. So I just wanted to point out specifically that, this is self-care, type work that I'm doing. And it's, while personal, it's not anything that you will know. But I do really love to use materials and form in order to express emotive qualities mostly. So I think a lot about pots in terms of use in the home, the everyday little rituals that we all have, whether it's our cup of coffee in the morning or a cup of tea in the afternoon, whatever it is, it's a little more special if you can find some beauty in the object you're using, or take a moment to wonder at something about it. And that really propels me forward in terms of continuing to be engaged in what I make.
Awesome.
Is that good? Is that enough?
That's good. Thank you. So we've got another question here. Yes, so we have several people, Kyle, wondering about your process, and I'll say along with that, I'd like to know more about your artistic journey.
All right, so it's I was painting for a long time in my past, and also dabbled in photography, taught photography for a little while. I have paintings here at home that are paintings that I've done up on the walls. But my inspiration is Basquiat. And so I have a deep love for his work. And my work kind of is inspired, my hand painted work is inspired by his work. And I'll show you, I have a piece right here. Color wise, you won't be able to really tell, but it's all hand painted. I use a lot of wax application to create lines and some outlining with black underglaze around the colors. So just, that kind of, like I said, it's hard to see the actual piece in the light that I have here, but that's my inspiration. The line of work that I'm doing with West Elm is all very similar. It's underglaze with a lot of wax resist design, but instead it has a more Aboriginal type of focus to it. In that, I don't know if anybody's really familiar with Aboriginal ceramics, but there's a lot of dotting that is done, and so that is where there's some inspiration from that. I also I wanted to have different products for different audiences. So I do have, and I don't have any here anymore, but I do have like a really design focused ceramic product as well, which was called the Red Sun vases, which had just simply white at the bottom, or black on the bottom, white on the top, half and half, and then a red stripe going down the center. And I really wanted to focus on kind of the sleek design world, and ultimately it worked out, as I was featured in Architectural Digest, and a couple other publications that I can't remember right now. I hope they're not listening.
So on not to, sorry to I don't want to interrupt the thought, but just those partnerships you've mentioned with West Elm and the magazines, is that something that you're seeking out, or are they seeking?
Those are, everything that, all the opportunities that I've had actually came through Instagram, them finding me, and, or, emailing me from my website. And a lot of those opportunities happen that way. I do a heavy bit of marketing and advertising and posting on Instagram. And the one reason that I've done that is because I took this, we all kind of maybe are familiar with the person that runs Pottery for All, that Instagram site. I don't know if, well, he did a workshop here and he actually looked at my Instagram page and said, well, he runs his own business off of Instagram and makes money off of Instagram. So he looked at my Instagram page and said, you need to line your squares up this way, and, have your face in one row, and then your art in the next row, and then your face in the next row, and how to align it so it really kind of attracts people. And then once you reach your 10,000 followers, which I did last month, Instagram allows you to then take your website and or it allows you to have this swipe up feature, so you can drive your followers directly to your website, and it will focus on driving them to your website or focus on driving them to a product that you have on your website. So I could post this vase. It's not on my website. Well, maybe it is on my website. I don't know. But I could post this vase and have people go directly to my website, directly to this vase itself.
Hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think this is me asking questions now, and it's maybe off the topic. I do have another question from an audience member, but I always think about that, in relationship, like, um, making as a business or a brand, and then making for oneself, and that kind of like where to fall or how to make sure that what I'm creating is what I want to create,
Right.
not answering what someone else wants me to create. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do have that separation. I'm currently, because West Elm has been a challenge, and I've gotten a lot of work from them. As a matter of fact, today was all about, I didn't make anything today, and all I did was packing and shipping today. And it troubles me, because the making part is the part that's important to me. Ultimately, I think I'll probably hire somebody part-time to help me with those things. But for example, I'm taking a slip casting mold making class right now, and so that I can create more of a wholesale line, or it's a lot easier to produce through, and specifically for West Elm, because right now everything is handmade. And so I've learned, I've taken the challenge, and I've learned how to really kind of recreate pieces over and over and over again. But it kind of blanks out the creativity part, so I want to create, I don't want to lose my handmade part of my business. I want to keep that. I want to make sure that that stays. But I do think that it's important to have, that wholesale, production type of part of it too.
Do any of the other panelists have thoughts on that? That kind of, that fine line between making to make and making for oneself, or kind of that it's essentially like making versus creating, or, the thought is very different.
Yeah.
Well, I think I brought up in my introduction that, it was really important to me to make for myself. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that have more meaning to me than money. And so I'm not driven by money. If I were driven by money, I would probably have a different perspective. But I care more about, I mean, I'm not suggesting that, here I go sticking my foot in my mouth. I'm not suggesting, Kyle, that that what you do is not legitimate. It totally is.
Right.
I personally can't do it. In fact, I've decided to slow down, and I'm making fewer things and just spending more time with them and more time with what I want to be doing. And if other people like it, great. But it's just, it would take some compartmentalization for me to have two separate lines or something like that. And I've learned it through experience that I can't do that. So,
well, I mean, I live in New York City, and it's, the hustle is real here, so it's going to be about money, but it's not, it's about money to be able to create, to be able to have my studio that I have. Nothing's ever cheap here. And so, the hustle is real to maintain.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm not living in a big city, but for me, I have the same thing. And it might be wood firing, where because my, the rate of firing the kiln, I'm firing the kiln 4 times a year. And so it's a very scheduled routine. Like, I already know the next time I can be getting pots out is going to be like late April, right? So in terms of working with companies, and even the retailers that I work with, they have to be willing to, put it in order and then receive it like 4 months later, depending on when they put it in, right? So I've always kind of been interested in that idea of a second line that is, I've like designed it. I have sketches. I already know the materials, and I've been working on towards trying to like apply for grants in order to exactly what Kyle said, maintain the wood fire work that I'm doing so that it doesn't have the pressure that I kind of sometimes feel about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience, and this is for anyone. It says, I suspect that pottery work is therapeutic. What has your craft brought you through, if that's not too personal? This is for anyone. Maybe Seth or Andrew.
Yeah, well, I actually had this conversation with someone the other day of just about maybe therapy, art, and the combination of that. And it didn't exactly entail just ceramics, but I mean, I think we go through a lot of things in life, and it's just ebbs and flows. But I think inherently with what I do, when I sit down at the wheel or when I'm in my studio, I mean, inherently what's happening is I'm slowing down, or I at least try to be conscious about that. And sometimes when I enter, I might be in a weird headspace, or I might be in a time in my day or week that is maybe stressful, high anxiety, and when I come out of the studio, it's very different. So I don't know off the top of my head, pottery getting me through something in particular. I mean, I think from time to time it humbles me in lots of ways, in very technical ceramic ways, but I think it humbles me, and not just in making, but in teaching. So I've been teaching for a while, and I taught in grad school, and that's kind of always been in my blood. So I think that's a whole nother aspect of, the being therapeutic is, I get something from my students as well, just as much as I do from being in the studio. And there are days where it's tough dealing with students, or dealing with, administration, or dealing with, whatever happens. But there are also days I come home and I'm just like over the moon at the way the students are responding, or seeing that person touch clay for the first time. So it brings me back to where I started, right? So I think that maybe there's not one thing in particular, but it kind of comes and goes. And my studio is where I go to be creative, but also to slow down. So hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I'll jump in on there. I think I wear a lot of hats in my life, and teaching full time at a university tugs and pulls at my time and my energy a lot. I have 4 children. They keep me busy, so when I'm home in the evenings, I'm home with them. And then after dinner and after the kids go to bed, like for an example, last night I was up till 1 a.m. putting handles on cups down in my studio. The one thing that having a studio at home has done for me has allowed me to be more present at home with my family, which is really important to me. Prior to this, oftentimes I would go have dinner with the kids and say goodbye, and then head back to the studio for another couple hours. And then, I wouldn't want to stay too late, because then I would have to drive home. And so I feel like I'm getting more done in the little kind of tidbits of time that I have. Either, I take my kids to school in the morning, I have a couple hours before I have to go to teach. I get a little studio time in. But I think, Andrew, one of the things that you said kind of made me think about something. And, I'm a type of person who likes to pay it forward. I had several mentors in my life throughout my lifetime, some key people that kind of came into my life at really pivotal times. Like, I mentioned in my intro that I was a wildland firefighter during undergraduate school, and I was making really good money, and I loved being in the outdoors. I was on an engine crew, and I would go out into the on the hot shot crew and go to Montana and Colorado and Utah, Arizona, all over the place, and I just loved it. And I really didn't think I could make a living as an artist. I was actually kind of scared to do it. And I took a workshop at Anderson Ranch Art Center, and I met Doug Casebeer. And that experience, and I did my very first wood firing there. It was that experience that really helped me gain the confidence to make, to go for it and to not give up on my goal and my dream of becoming an artist and an educator. And one of the things he told me during that workshop is, he asked me what I was going to do with my life. And I said, well, I'm actually thinking about giving up art altogether and going to be a firefighter. And I told him that, I didn't think I could make a living as an artist. And anyway, long story short, he told me that he thought that he felt that I had what it took to make a living as an artist. And so that was the motivation that I needed to stick with it and keep going. And so I ended up going to graduate school. So in my teaching and my role as a teacher and a professor now, I'm looking for the opportunity to encourage people and kind of pay forward that motivation that I needed at a young age. And I think not necessarily making in the studio is therapeutic for me, but being that sounding board or that platform for someone who's maybe struggling to trying to figure out what the heck they're making as a student to get their BFA show done, or to, what to do to continue on in the future. So.
Well, I totally connect with that, because I also teach at an art school in Manhattan. And that definitely, when you come out of your class or while you're even in class and you see a student struggling and you show them a direction in which to go or a technique, and all of a sudden that light bulb clicks on and you have what I call that aha moment. And it's so satisfying when you're giving that instruction to them, and they can, really, it's paying it forward 100%. What you've learned is now what they're learning. And one of the other things that I want to mention is that the conversation about therapy behind ceramics. Well, I keep this part kind of separate from my ceramics career, and in that I also have a Wall Street daytime job that I work as an IT director for a healthcare insurance company.
Wait, right now you do?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I have a problem with not sleeping very much. So when I started ceramics, I actually worked in IT for Bloomberg News. And that was the catalyst for me to really step into something I already knew I was meant to do. I had for years seen ceramics at the Corcoran School of Art in Washington, D.C., but never participated in it there. And it was until 2003 when I was working for Bloomberg, and the job was so stressful that I needed to find an outlet for that stress. And I started a ceramics class back then. Always knew I was supposed to be doing it, and started it and never looked back. I even ultimately after a while, paid for other students to take classes when they couldn't afford it. And just kind of paying it forward like that. They were onto something. They were on a trajectory that would, I saw growth in them. And so I actually paid for some students to take classes, yeah, so keep that secret. That day job is secret. I can guarantee none of them are here.
This is really great. It kind of makes me think just back to first starting in clay, this conversation, that feeling. And it's really, when I think about it, the core of that question or that idea of like how to keep that creative spirit alive. It's like how to keep that beginner energy behind what you're doing so that it doesn't turn into the thing that then you look for something else to be the therapy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you want to be able to make money off of it and be successful in it, but you also want it to be fulfilling and satisfying for your life.
Yes.
And
I'm working hard to get out of that Wall Street job right now and become a full-time potter. That's the goal. I've given myself a year to do that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I just want to say, all three of you, the fact that you do more than one thing is something to be proud of. It's, I've tried it and failed. And it's not, for me, it's really difficult to change gears. There's no way I could teach all day at school and then come home and find energy to make pots. So I really appreciate that
I don't know if there's a lot of energy involved, but there's a lot of wheel involved, like deadlines, like this pottery festival that's coming up
Right.
next weekend.
Right, next weekend.
Deadlines are helpful. Seth, we have a question about, Seth, could you explain how you downfire? Thanks, Connie.
Yeah, it kind of, so the backstory is in graduate school, I did a bunch of glaze tests and I didn't do any downfiring, but I had like, I don't know, 300 glaze tests in the kiln, and it was really densely packed with a lot of other pots around it. And the kiln kind of inadvertently slow cooled. And so I got some results out, and then the next time I went to fire the kiln, I didn't have very much, and I just had a few things in there. And so then I did another round of tests, and none of the glazes turned out. So I had to figure out what the heck was going on. And I had the luxury of going to school with Peter Pinnell. I don't know if anyone knows him, but he's a really wonderful glaze chemist, a wonderful potter. He's a really great teacher. But he said, well, those crystals grew in that first firing because that kiln grew, the kiln cooled slowly. And he says, if you want to mimic that, if you don't have a full kiln, do a little down firing. And so I did that, and I've been doing that. Basically, I'm firing, this is in the gas kiln. I'm firing in a reduction atmosphere. I usually go only to about cone 9, because cone 10, all of my glazes run all over the place. So I try to avoid that if I can. And then I'm just down firing. I'm basically just, depending on the kiln that you have, the size of the kiln and how much gas pressure is coming into the line. I usually just turn down my gas pressure a couple pounds, or water column inches, and I open the damper a little bit. I'm basically putting the kiln into a neutral atmosphere, not oxidation or reduction, just kind of somewhere in the middle. And I've been just using the 40 minutes. There's nothing magical about it, except for that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, and it's worked. So that's kind of the process that I go through. I'll even sometimes go to great lengths of like lining my pots. Like if I only have a few pieces in the kiln and I really want to have some good crystal growth, I'll actually line my pots, like on the exterior of my pots inside the kiln on the shell. I'll put hard bricks around the kiln, so it'll kind of allow that little section of the kiln to kind of cool a little bit slower. So,
This is really technical, Seth, and I apologize for doing that. But do you do that 40 minutes from your peak temperature?
yes.
So
from-
right after you finish?
yeah. So usually, did you say where do I finish at?
No, I wondered when you do the 40 minutes.
Yeah. So
Right
at
after
the
you do.
peak temperature, when cone 9 goes down, which is about 20, almost 2300 degrees. And I'm usually cooling down, and it's about 2000 degrees, maybe 1950 or so.
Yeah.
When I get done. That's a good question, Birdie.
Well, the next one is, so you do that down fire for the slow cool crystal growth, not for the color necessarily, not for the metallic color.
I think that the metallic color comes during the reduction firing
You do.
on the way up. The
Yeah.
crystal
Oh, okay.
growth
Yeah.
is what I'm really going for. Like if I don't slow cool the kiln, I will get little small crystals in the glaze that I'm using, but they're kind of not very dramatic and not very exciting. I really like when they kind of get large and hexagonal in structure. And so that's why I do the down firing.
Thank you.
Okay, so another question for this is for any participant. Who is your who has been most influential in your work?
Oh gosh, that's hard.
And it can be pretty open. It can be an other ceramic artists that you look to. It can be other artists, or it can be an experience. It can, it don't feel, it can be open, just something that maybe you just feel like is has influenced your work in some big way.
Well, I've chimed in for the last 2 days of these Zoom meetings, and I mean, we think about this all the time, and we talk to our students about it all the time. And so I think that, influences, we definitely have core influences, but they change through experience. So I've been thinking about that. I mean, there are definitely people and artists that have influenced me greatly from undergrad specifically, in starting understanding just ceramics from the beginning, but getting into atmospheric firing. So in undergrad was Matt Long, of course. And then grad school was, I had 3 professors, Peter Biesecker, Margie Hutto, and Errol Willett. But I was fortunate enough to TA for David McDonald for a semester, and I was in a glaze calc class with him. And I can't tell you how amazing and, beneficial, influential he's been. I didn't have a lot of time with him in class, but over the 3 years at Syracuse, we got to be pretty good friends, and I learned a lot from him also in terms of being an instructor, a mentor, because he is one of the best. Talk about a humble, person. So my experience in grad school was a huge influence in going to China and India for 2 residencies. So that's kind of where a lot of my work, you can see bits and pieces from those mentors and teachers, but also the material and the historical, aspects of porcelain and the iron-rich glazes. But I think more recently, I guess I've kind of been moving it's maybe slow steps, but I've always looked at color and pattern and line for inspiration all over nature and architecture and other artists. And that's very general, but my wife and I went on our honeymoon to Barcelona. And so we went to Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. And that's been on my list for years. And so my work at the time was going into this realm of color and kind of combining a lot of different elements of not just the firing, but glaze. So, Seth, you talked about some of, you love the slips, and you can use those slips pretty much just on the whole pot. And so that happens in wood firing for me, but I started using underglazes and layering that with glazes. And then when I walked away from that experience, things have been trickling back into my studio practice and looking at translucency and stained glass. So a lot of these things that sort of, maybe it was like a light bulb that went off when I was on that trip. So all these things that I've been thinking about, I've started maybe a new series or a new kind of vein of thinking about that. And so that's where the most recent work has come from, is sort of playing with glaze and translucency and puncturing the wall of the clay and letting the glaze fill it in. And I mean, I'm not trying to fight what stained glass does, but I think I want it to emulate that. And sort of looking back, you know, I look back from time to time at the people that I've that have been influenced inherently or directly, and David McDonald just continues to come into my brain because of really everything that he does in his work and who he is as an artist, especially with pattern, if you're familiar with his work. So, long story long.
Can I say something about travel?
Mhm.
So that's one of my main, actually, one of the main ways that I get perspective is through travel. And I think it's a very important part of my practice. You know, it's not part of everyone's practice, but when I go away and think about where I was, I have a totally different perspective. And likewise, when I come back and I think about what was there, I have some new perspective, and it continually drives my work. And I'll just say briefly too that I've had a lot of mentors in my life. I've looked at a lot of work, ceramics and other media, but I tend to focus more on ideas and movements, things like Mingei, Japanese aesthetic movement, or I'm drawing a blank on Frank Lloyd Wright, and you know, in the idea of usefulness being beautiful. And so beauty and utility, beauty and usefulness, beauty in the everyday, beauty in the home, those kinds of things are what drive me, as well as my interactions with what's right outside of my home. You know, I'm thinking about what I bring in from my yard or what I take outside from my house. So that's sort of like direct, very close interchange of perspective.
Hey, Birdie, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
I'm done.
what you said, you don't seem nervous at all. I clearly forgot to mention something that you nailed on the head,
Oh,
and that's beauty. I mean, that's something that I strive for in everything that I make, and so I think what you said is just, you nailed it. Trying to emulate that in the pots, but also in the life outside of, you know, getting them through the studio and them into somebody else's hands, you know.
right.
So thank you for saying that.
Do you guys enjoy seeing your pots in other people's homes that you've sold? You know, it's something new for me. I really enjoy seeing it, and I've had a lot of people take snaps and videos and you know, and I've been able to use those on Instagram as well. But I really enjoy it. I'm wondering what you guys think about that.
Oh yeah, it's always great to see pots in use, and pots in other people's homes. You know, when I first started making pots, if it was a pot made for something specific, I really had a hard time letting go of, you know, somebody who bought it and said, "Oh, I'm going to put it up on the shelf and I'm never going to use it." And you know, I used to have trouble relinquishing control over that. But but now that I see what people do with my pots, I trust them, and I know that they're gonna get something, useful out of them, whether it's physical or emotional. So
I think to add on to that, it's, I tell this to my students in a critique all the time, is everybody's perspective is different. And, there's lots of like basics and rules that we learn of not only how to make the work, but how to critique the work. But it's always more interesting when the whole room has a different perspective on somebody's work and they see different things. Not only do they see different things, but they might interpret them differently, in their hands or in their home. So I guess we all go through that. I still kind of go through that from time to time when I see somebody that's that either uses it in a different way, or maybe it's just a different perspective. But I have to step back. I guess I'm reminded from my students, and when I get to school, that I have to just step back and look at that interpretation, look at how it lives, and what can I learn from it, or what can I do if I want something differently from the work, then I can make that choice. I can make that change. And also it's nice to see that other people are using it. And I think that, I use these pots on the wall, but I think that sometimes work sitting on the wall can be just as important, maybe not pottery, but I think that visually, there are lots of ways for work to be, quote, functional, and not be used. So that's something that, God, that was in every grad conversation we had, and I got tired of it, but I'm really grateful for those conversations.
Well, you know it inside out. You know your stuff. Utilitarian versus functional.
Yeah, right. But it's definitely nice to see people using your work. It's killer.
It means you've succeeded, right? You've succeeded at your task, and you can reap the rewards. So.
Right.
So we are on the hour right now. So I just want to say I could definitely have this conversation for hours more if we were all hanging out. This is a great conversation. I'm kind of sorry to have to call it.
Okay.
But I just want to remind everyone that the Southern Crossings Pottery Festival is next weekend, March 5th through 7th. And we also have a raffle currently going on that's benefiting 100% benefits go to Blessings in a Backpack. So you can get entries on our website. That's an organization we've partnered with since Southern Crossings started 4 years ago. And the raffle winners will be announced on Sunday, the final day of the sale. So, thank you all so much for your time. I might be calling you all just to keep talking after we get off here. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you to the participants. So,
yeah, thank you. This has been amazing that you guys are putting this type of venue together, more than just the sale. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
You all have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody. Nice to meet you, Kyle.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet y'all.
Andrew. I've seen
See
you
you again. Yeah.
online. Birdie,
Have a good weekend.
Birdie, good to see you
Birdie.
too. It's been
See you,
too
Lindsay.
long.
Bye, Kyle.
Nice
Bye,
to meet
Lindsay.
you.
All right.